TJ found his freedom again.
I did.
I know he's had these like ups and downs, and now he's like up on that freedom life.
He's back, about to hit that 50 and just keep running.
No doubt, man. You couldn't have said it more perfect. I found my freedom again, but it's been a roller coaster.
Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Be sure to check out our website, findyourfreedompod.com, for all the tools and tips you need to find your own freedom. Also, sign up for our badass newsletter. Yo. Welcome to Find Your Freedom, TJ. So excited to have you on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the pod, TJ.
How you guys doing, Doug, Jonathan?
This is long time coming, bro. We've been trying to get you on the pod for a little while now, but you've been too busy living your life of freedom, bro.
That I have. Guilty as charged.
I love watching your Instagram, taking your family on trips, taking your lady on trips. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what this phase of your life is like right now that you know, like just before we even started recording, you're just saying like, yeah, man, like I'm just firing on all cylinders and I'm like really living my life of freedom.
I really am. You know, I think the biggest part of that is one of my three daughters. My daughter, Corinza, has come in 2 years ago, a little over 2 years now, and has taken over as the operations manager and has really given me the freedom to travel, you know, to not worry about my books that I'm being embezzled or stolen from. And not only that, but
can't wait to get to that story. All right, you already referenced it. Let's just jump right into it.
Let's get the elephant in the room. Let's go.
All right, so you run Bend Painting, super successful painting company up in Bend, Oregon. And you've been doing it for what, 14 years now? Is that right?
This May was 26.
Oh my gosh. Update your website, bro.
You've been at it for 26 years?
26 years.
Oh, I love that, dude. Oh my gosh.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your website's only a decade behind. So that just shows how when you run a good company, sometimes the website doesn't matter because word of mouth is far superior to a good website. Oh, that's awesome.
There you go.
All right. All right. So tell us a little bit about this embezzlement employee. Just real quick, what was happening in the company and then sort of how that impacted you guys.
Well, you know what? It was basically what was happening in my life. I had a 15-year marriage. I had my 4 beautiful kids. And then there had been a short period of time where they were young and I jumped too quick and I got into a quick 2-year marriage that didn't work out, that ended up hurting the kids, hurting me, hurting all kind of stuff because of my lack of discretion, etc. And so during that time, I had an amazing office manager who was real qualified, CPA, the whole nine, that worked for me, that was really handling things well. Well, right about the 4-year mark, she got married, moved on, got my sister back in, or a new operations manager, and was looking at my books. Said, TJ, you need to come over here and take a look at this. Something is off. You know where I was for the last 2 years? Sulking, traveling, licking my wounds. And I took my eyes off the prize. I took my eyes off my business. And I trusted this person. And during those 4 years, long story short, what we found was over $235,000 that she embezzled from me. Yeah.
Just taking out the bottom. Wow.
Taking out the bottom. And, in my distraction, in my healing, my healing time of life, I got taken. I took my eyes off the prize,
So your takeaway from what happened, like, how would you caution others? So it's like your business is going really well. You'd been in business for quite a while at that time, made good money, seeing a lot of success. For entrepreneurs that are kind of on that cruise control mode, how would you caution them? Like, what should they be looking out for to avoid that from happening to them?
Well, first off, one of the things that I think is different for me from most of your guests, first off, wow, I am blown away by the guests that you have on the show, their wisdom, their ambition, their successes. It's been incredible to listen and to watch. It's inspiring. My background is I have no education. I have no degrees. I had to learn this all the hard way. So in doing so, I would say make sure you go and get a business degree. Make sure you have double accountants, people checking your books. Um, that I didn't. And so being 49 years old, almost 50, I literally come from the generation of handshakes, where when we shook hands or we signed a contract, it was binding. I mean, it's the way you do it. You don't steal either, or there's consequences.
That should be a given, right?
That should be a given. Well, 26 years now that Ben Penny's been going, times have changed. Employees have changed. Life's changed. Society has changed. And if you don't keep up with those changes, there you go. I'm a perfect example.
I just want to jump in and say, dude, thank you so much for the kind words. Like, we're really excited about what's happening with the pod right now. But I think that one thing Doug and I haven't done a good job of, that I think you're pointing out right now, we haven't done a good enough job of having, all the different types of entrepreneurs on. I think we've had a lot of sort of some bigger companies, some hyper successful people, but there's so many more of the people that are living these great lifestyle companies that they're able to take care of their families really well. They're able to live comfortable lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the perfect example of how you've been running this business for now, 26 years. You've had ups and downs, but you've been able to the whole time sort of just take care of your family, grow it when you need to grow it, take it easy when you're able to take it easy. And I think your story resonates really well with a really large, portion of our audience who are saying, I want to run a business like Ben Painting. I want to start my own thing. I have some experience with this, or I've always been thinking about it. Can you take us back to when you started the painting company? What were your initial thoughts? What was your experience? And like, how did it really, get off the ground 26 years ago?
Ooh, would you mind if I go back a little further?
Please do.
Yes, please.
So I think it'll set up the understanding for your listeners. So where I got started at a young age was I had an opportunity, lo and behold, because my mom used to work for this Halloween company. It was a second biggest wholesale Halloween company in the world, and it was owned by the Kardashians. So at the time, it was Robert Kardashian, or Bob, and his wife, Chris. So my mom worked for them. So when I was, 11, 12, 13, 14, during those years, they would have photo shoots for the Halloween costumes that you would see like in Sears and JCPenney's, and they hanging on the hook. All of our kids end up buying them.
Yep.
Well, I was that kid for years that was on the face of those costumes. And so at that moment,
I'm gonna go find one of those pictures. I'm gonna use
gotta
it as
pull that up.
I'm gonna use it as your thumbnail for the podcast.
Oh, hell yeah.
I got a few. And just go to my
Yes.
I did a Throwback Thursday about 3-4 months ago, and I posted some on my social media. So you can see the great American hero and the ninja.
All right. So you are that kid for the Kardashians. All right.
Right. So then I have a trouble past. I'm just gonna lay it out there. I grew up in Southtown San Diego, which is basically Palm Avenue, 2 miles from the border of Tijuana, of Mexico. So growing up in that environment, my dad took off when I was about 8. And at that moment, it was hard to live and to survive with my mom and my sister. There was times when we were homeless, but then people, by their graciousness, they would bring us in, let us share like a 10 by 10 bedroom with 3 single beds.
Wow.
Kind of in a horseshoe, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, but by any means. But it was rough growing up in Southtown San Diego, and it was rough growing up poor. So with that being said, I ended up getting kicked out of high school my junior year, the first couple months into it. There was a gentleman who came over to take over our school to reform it, to make it better. And he came in, Mr. Escamillo, and he was on that movie Stand and Deliver. I don't know if you remember that movie.
Oh, that's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the principal that took over that school in East LA. He was then called to come take over our school. Well,
Wow.
our school had barbed wire around the fences, no lockers. We weren't allowed to have lockers because what would go in those lockers. And he was going to take over. Well, I never did well with that as a kid. I was genuinely the black sheep. That's just who I was, but I was trying to survive. Well, he didn't like my attitude. I didn't listen to what he wanted to say, so he expelled me.
Wow.
At that time, my dad came out of the woodwork and said, hey, why don't you come back east to West Virginia, where he's originally from, and let's come catch up. I said, sure. Well, that was short-lived. He ended up leaving there as well. But I was in the middle of Christmas break, my senior year. So I wanted to graduate. So I ended up getting my own apartment, graduating from high school. And I was also working 2 jobs at the same time. So one of the jobs was I was managing a retail clothing store for men and women back in the Ohio Valley Mall. Well, during that time, I was ready to come back. I graduated, I had mentioned it to my mom. My mom was still working for this Halloween company that had then been sold to 2 of the executives or vice presidents at the time that used to work for the Kardashians. So they took over, rebranded this Halloween company. And the director of human resources overheard my mom. She asked my mom, so what store does he manage? She's like, I used to work for 12 years with a sister company to this store. I know how they train. I know how they raise people up. Do you think TJ would consider moving back to San Diego and helping me launch our new retail program? Because they're a wholesale company. It's a wholesale Halloween company, but they wanted to have a retail presence in San Diego and in LA. And my territory that they were going to possibly offer me would be San Diego. So she calls me. I said, sure. So she goes, I'm going to call you tomorrow. Can we have a phone interview? Well, I got about an hour of your time. I'm like, sure. So Shelly calls me. She's a director of human resources for the company at this time. Interviews me, calls me back 2 days later. She goes, when can you be here in 2 weeks? I'm like, okay, let's go. So now from a teenager, posing for these silly costumes and makeup and all this stuff. Not that they're silly, but I look silly. Now I'm coming back to launch a brand new retail program.
How old are you at this point, TJ?
20.
Okay. 20
years old. So I'm like, wow, I'm nervous. Like, this is a big task to launch something off the ground. I ended up having 12 stores in San Diego County and all over. And another gentleman took Los Angeles. Well, the cool thing was for 6 months, I got to work with Shelly side by side. She mentored me, literally mentored me. She would teach me all these principles and these things not to do. And, and all it was so priceless to me. So we launched it. It was successful. But at the end of that season, I had joined a short-term, kind of like a Bible college. It was like a 9-month course. And I ended up meeting my wife at that time. 7 months later, we got married.
Wow.
So
you wasted no time.
I wasted no time. So the reason why is my past prior to that, I have always been in business. It was just not legal business that I used to do when I was younger. Now, we're going to just leave it at that. But I used my street skills and the things that I learned on the streets, how to deal with people, honor your word, all those types of things that make a successful businessman successful. Go ahead.
Right.
So I took those principles and applied them to actual business. And so throughout my life, I've been blessed to get these opportunities, right? To be chosen as the one, help start a retail program. I'm like, are you nuts?
Right.
That's crazy. That's above me. Again, I didn't even go to college. Like, how is this possible? Well, by the grooming and the mentorship.
You're smart, and they could tell that you were good at what you were doing, which was networking and working hard and managing people, and people like working with you. Like, those are traits that, like, you don't need to always have a master's degree or even a bachelor's degree. Like, you have a master's in being a good person, a master's in being a good boss, a master's in developing people. And those are traits that I think a lot of people notice. And that's why you're getting these opportunities, TJ, at that early age, at 20, with that, really, really rough background. And I love how you brought us back to those early years to give us a little bit of understanding about really like where you came from.
Right.
And that'll make us really better appreciate sort of where you've been.
Exactly.
And my big takeaway, TJ, from what you said was, you started off by saying like, I have no degrees, no real formal education, just barely made it through high school.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got under the wing of this woman, Shelly, and she was a knowledgeable business person. She saw a lot of potential in you. And that's where you got your education that served you later when you started up your business. It's like, I think a lot of times people use that as an excuse why they can't be successful. I didn't go to college. I don't have the degrees. I can't compete out here with those that did. But really, it's the experience and it's those mentors that you can get up under where that can be more valuable, way more valuable than even going to college or getting that degree.
I 100% agree. At least in my situation, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that opportunities. I had to work. I actually signed up when I was back east for college, and I want to be a psychologist. And so I started, but I had to take a full ride. Well, I couldn't work 2 jobs and take a full ride. Ended up melting down and dropping out. Like I just couldn't do it. It wasn't feasible. Had to pay my own bills. So then at that same time, I was asked to go on tour with my good buddies who I was friends with that I introduced to start a band back in the day. And that band is still rocking and rolling today, POD. I don't know if you guys have heard of Youth of the Nation.
Of course.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. So Noah came to me one day, who was kind of like my surrogate dad in a sense. Noah and Agnes, they're like my second mom and dad that raised us kids in the streets. They were 15 years old when they had Wuv, and Araya was 16 years old, I believe, when she had Sonny, which is a drummer and the lead singer.
Yeah.
So Noah was like, hey, TJ, they were at that time signed under his record company called Rescue Records. He said, we're going to launch our first tour around the country. I want you to go with them, be their tour manager, take care of the merchandise and all the finances. Would you be down?
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, heck yeah. Are you kidding me? Go see all these cities and tour.
What an opportunity. I love that.
So I did that, and it was, about a month or so. It's kind of a mini tour. So I get back home, but yet.
So how long were you working for the retail company? And then how long did you do the tour for? How long did you work with Shelly?
About 1.5 years, because it was a time period before that to set up this whole program. And then, Halloween season is only from yay to yay, but
right.
The whole setup of getting all these storefronts, the brick and mortar storefronts and getting them all set up and merchandise. And it was, what a learning lesson. So now I'm in a dilemma because my children's mom, my wife at the time, we were getting ready to get married in October. I turned 21 in September. Now the boys are really ready to go on tour and do some things because the hype's out there. They're getting sought after by big record labels. But my heart changed. And my heart changed this way. I wanted to go and help kids. I wanted to work with teenagers. I wanted to pour into them and give them a shot like I was given a shot. But more than that, give them hope so that they didn't have to go through the crap I went through growing up.
Wow.
And for some reason, I've always been able to connect with high school kids, So I decided, got married 7 months later. We pack up. We're broke at this point because I gave up. I wasn't working anymore. Like I gave it all up. So we drive up the 5 to go ultimately up to like Bellingham, Washington, where her sister was, Seattle. And then on the way back through, the gentleman said, hey, there's this opportunity for you to work with teenagers if you want. It's in Bend, Oregon. I'm like, where's Bend, Oregon? I'm from San Diego. Like, the only thing that exists is Southern California, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how about I drive through on the way back home? I looked at a map. It's 2.5 hours from Salem, Oregon. I'm going to do that. So we zip through. The town's 29,000 people at this point. Just tiny. It was 94, I would say. Tiny town. We both looked around like, it's as good of a place as any, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'm from the concrete jungle. So there's all these big trees. Right. And I was just excited to work with kids. So we go home, we pack up. 2 weeks later, we move up. Now, let me remind you, this is a non-paying job working with these kids, and I probably work 15, 16 hours a week with them in the evenings and the weekends. So when I first came up here, the number one thing I knew I didn't want to do retail anymore because those hours, right. Evenings, weekends, it's impossible. It's a wacky schedule. But I said, well, I'm just going to do whatever. And this is where it comes to the painting part of it.
All right, here we
There
are.
was a guy who was a part of this startup up here in Bend, Oregon, and he was painting for another gentleman. He goes, yeah, I'll give you a job. I'm like, 9 to 5, basically, 8 to 4. Let's do it.
Sounds
My wife
great.
at the time, yeah, she got a job at the bank for $5.50 an hour, and I got a job painting for $6 an hour. I was stoked. Stoked. I don't know why. It kind of sounds silly.
Yeah.
Well, you were stuck inside working retail, which fits well with some people, but I know your personality, working outside, being in nature, being with people. Like, I could totally see how that would be something that you would vibe with.
Yeah, I needed my evenings and I needed my weekends so that I could hang out and work with these youth. That's what I wanted to do. So at that time, my wife was a cosmetologist in California, but the hours don't transfer over in Oregon. So she had to be a cosmetologist license up here. She had to go back to school and get, I don't know what it was, 500 hours, something like that.
Wow.
So when she decided to start doing that, man, I got the news. Monet's on the way.
Baby on the way.
Baby on the way.
Shit got real.
So,
yep.
So now I'm up to $8.50 an hour. So I've been here for about 3 years, right? 2.5 years, 3 years. I'm making a whopping $8.50 an hour. She's making nothing because she's going to school.
Right.
So I go, and at that time, to make that work, we downsized from our little small duplex that we had into a 14 by 52 foot, 40-year-old trailer. When I'm talking trailer, I'm talking like trailer park.
Legit trailer.
Yeah, I mean, you can't write this stuff.
Are we talking single wide, double wide?
14 feet wide by 52 feet long. 40 years old. But you know what? The baby was on the way. And me, I was the one
who had to do what you had to do.
I did the books. Back then it was, we had checkbooks. So I had to do the checkbook and I didn't mind that stuff. One day I got home a little bit before my wife did because she was working late. And I was sitting there at the table and I was doing the math because we were getting free stuff for the baby on the way, formula, all these different things. But one of the things that wasn't accounted for was diapers.
Oof.
About $40 a month. I don't know what they cost now because my kids are older, but it was about $40 a month. Well, guess what, man? As I sat there, tears started to stream down my eyes.
Wow.
When I realized I'm going to be a father, but what father doesn't provide for his children?
Yeah, brutal.
And at that moment, I got angry. And I got angry with God. And I said, I left all that I left back in California to do what I believe you called me to do, to come up here and work with youth and all this stuff. And I can't even afford $40 for diapers for my child that's on the way. And as you could probably imagine, when I talk to God, I talk to God. We have a different relationship than other people do with God. And I was pissed. And I was yelling. I can't believe I'm a badass worker. I work hard. Nobody works as hard as me.
Yep.
But yet I'm going to be a deadbeat, worthless father that can't afford diapers for his kid. The next day I'm sitting having coffee with my buddy Johnny. And I call him Big Dog. He's 6'6", about 10 years older than I was. And I'm telling him this situation. And he goes, why don't you start your own business? I go, what are you talking about? He's like, why don't you start your own business? Like a painting business? Yeah, you're already doing it.
Dang, Big Johnny. So it hadn't even occurred to you before he said that.
Can I tell you why it's never occurred to me? I don't think, maybe there's one or two people out there. I always make a joke about this. Do you think when I was young, when I was growing up, I said, you know what, one day when I get old, I'm going to be a painter? Never was that even an inkling in my mind, because they're looked down upon as a whole. Lowly, drunks, alcoholics, drug addicts, right? I mean, tradesmen in general. They're not always esteemed or looked up upon as something that you made it. So I didn't even consider it.
That's what I think is so interesting. I'm just going to jump in right here. I think this story is so incredible. I've recently had the realization, like, I think you're being a little harsh on the outlook of tradesmen, whatever. But just, I think AI specifically is helping people look at like what jobs are easily replaceable with this artificial intelligence. And then I think there's going to be this real kind of look at there's a lot of these jobs out here that are so critical, so important. We need plumbers, we need painters, we need electricians, we need mechanics. And I think there's gonna be in the next year or two, like another just like real trend. Like these are jobs that are so critical. We need our houses taken care of. We need our houses painted, and a real appreciation, a renewed appreciation for these jobs that support people with real good lives now, and they're not going away ever because they cannot be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And, I could see that, during certain periods, those jobs might have been not as appreciated. And I'm hoping that this AI is going to really say like, wow, these are such critical jobs and they deserve the same type of respect and admiration that we have for these other industries. And I hope it helps there be more support for the trade schools and for the training of these people, because Ben painting ain't going away with AI.
Right. And you know what?
There's no concerns.
Jonathan, you're absolutely right. And you know what? I'm already seeing the shift. It's already happening because we pay well now. Tradesmen.
Right.
Most of us get more money than people that just come out of college.
Right.
With no debt, with no college debt. So the shift is happening. So when I'm sitting down there with Johnny, and I'm like, man, I don't know, man, because I work 8 hours a day, 4 weeks out of the month, and I still can't make my bills. So he said, let me ask you something. What would you need to encourage you to go out, get your contractor's license? What would you need financially? Like, or let's see, he says like a house. Like, do you need a house to paint? I'm like, Johnny, if I had one small tract home that's like new construction, inside, outside, first off, I could finish it by myself in 5 days, 5 working days. And number two, it would double what I make working for the entire month. That profit.
Wow. In 5 days.
So he goes, and he starts smirking and laughing like he does, like Johnny does. I'm like, what? What's up with this? Like, cocky, like,
you're like, what's so funny?
Right? And he goes, you, man, you're funny. And I go, what do you mean? He's like, oh, Mr. TJ, coming up here to do this, living by faith. How big is your God? And I go, what? He goes, is your God too little that he can't give you that one house a month? And he starts smirking again. And I go, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
That guy called me out. He called me out on what I believe and what I've already put into motion and how I even got to Bend, Oregon. Challenge accepted. Within 1 month, I think I made 3 times more than I made working all month. And by the second month, it just kept compounding.
I love it.
By the third month, by the second year, when I went to my CPA, he was so pissed at me. He goes, TJ, why didn't you come in here sooner? What are you talking about? You're going to owe probably $80,000 in taxes. What do you mean?
Oh, that first painful tax bill.
He's like, I have doctors, lawyers, developers, big time contractors in this town. You make more money than most doctors right now. In my second year of business, I was like,
wow.
No, everybody makes money like this, right? He's like, no. So go this way. Now I was ashamed, right, of kind of calling myself a painter. We'd go on these fancy trips, places, and end up getting seated at a round table. And there would be the who's at these tables. And they would all go around, start talking about what they did. And, oh, big dogs, right? These guys were successful men. And they would come to me. And I don't know why I did this, because my attitude has shifted since then. But I'd be like, I'm an entrepreneur. Just leave it at that. Because I am an entrepreneur.
Hell yeah, you are.
But I also knew the first thing they all thought was, yeah, he's a drug dealer.
Oh, really?
Because I didn't expound on it. Because why? Everybody was just big chested. Why even expound on it?
Yeah.
But then something hit me later.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome.
And I realized, you know what? I'm not a painter. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a man who saw a need, took it to provide for his children. And wow, who would have thought that me becoming a painting contractor would do all this? It's incredible.
Yes, man.
Dude,
it's incredible.
Your story gave me so many goosebumps right now.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about all the things that you just said right there and taking it in. And I remember on a previous episode we were talking about how I think sometimes parents, young parents, or parents that are maybe even in their 30s, that have a stable job are afraid to start a business because they have those mouths to feed, because they have that extra pressure and overhead from trying to support their family. But our guest, when we were having that conversation, said your kids and your spouse can be the greatest motivator there is.
Yep.
And it sounds like that was kind of the same thing for you. All you needed was your buddy Big John to say, hey man, you need a house, you need one house to paint, and then that was it. You were off to the races, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's why he laughed at me and mocked me, because as I was trying to sulk to him, he's a good enough friend that's like, oh man, no, I'm not gonna let you keep getting down on yourself. Let's do this. Have some faith. Trust it.
Yeah.
Take that leap. You gotta take the leap. I know one of the questions that you had on here was, what would be something that you would ask or say to somebody who was considering starting a job, right? Starting up a new business. And I loved it. And what came to my mind was, first off, why? What's your motives? What's your intention? Why do you want to start this business? And
know your why.
Know your why. Now, as we know, so many businesses fail, especially restaurant businesses, gyms. I think they're the top two of, most failed businesses within a year or 2 years, right? They start up, they go under. Now, I always ask myself, why is that? Because I think people go into those businesses emotionally. They're emotional because it's something that they love and enjoy to do in their personal, private life, and they intermix it with business when maybe they weren't cut out to be an entrepreneur. They were cut out to dish up great recipes and to have, a goddess body, for the guys who work out in the gym. But then to mix that with then owning your own gym, it's emotional. It's an emotional purchase. Not looking at all the overhead and the liabilities. And so when I went into bin painting, it was the furthest thing from emotional. I didn't want to be a painter. I mean, I wanted to join you guys on a podcast.
And here we are. 26 years later.
Right?
So,
I love that.
So the story sounds like you had a quick start, and by year 2, you were already crushing, making more money than you'd ever dreamed you would make. So you touched on the embezzlement. You touched on, it sounds like your CPA hit you with a fat bill that you weren't expecting after that huge second year. What was the most difficult stage of the business in those early years that you faced, Ben Penny?
Well, going 26 years now, gosh, I remember I went to that 9/11, right? 9/11, we probably hit 9-10 months of a bubble because the whole world got rocked and it messed up our economy and stuff. Of course, 2008 hit.
Yeah.
That was horrific. That was also same year as my divorce, my separation of 15 years. Those were the hardest things because for me, when I came up here to Bend, Oregon, being a small town, coming with my work ethic, and also one of the things I had on my side was I didn't hunt, I didn't fish, I didn't snowboard or ski. I just wanted to work. So all these other subcontractors, these contractors would lose them during hunting season, during fishing season, during skiing season, and they were like kind of living like, hey, we're trying to make money up here. I'm like, and I remember the first question this gentleman named Kelly asked me from a company who I still work for today. He asked me that, do you fish? Do you hunt? Do you snowboard? I go, no. He goes, you're hired. So, you're hired. And I still work for those guys to this day.
I love that.
So for me, just working hard and being diligent up here in this market. Now the market's changed now. It's pretty aggressive. It's different than it used to be, but it was really easy. I'll be honest with you. For me, it's like taking candy from a baby. But my purpose, my drive that was within me was to take care of these kids. Now, I got to remind you, after Monet was Corinza 17 months later. Hello. What? 2 in diapers now. And then 2 years later was Michaela, right? And then 3 years later was Xavier, just popping them out. I couldn't stop working.
Better keep working. Yeah.
There's
your motivation right there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm so curious. I love your story. I love your passion for helping people. And then I was thinking about painting and I was trying to compare it with other businesses. I think it's such a cool and interesting business. And I love that these are the types of businesses that you really are able to start with a low threshold. It gives people the opportunity. It's not like a huge risk where it takes like a huge amount of capital to do it. Mm-hmm. How is it that you use those attributes to kind of set yourself apart? Like, I'm sure there was already other painting companies there. What is it that you think that helped it take off so quickly, since it is kind of an industry that you can get into with a lower threshold? How do you protect yourself from the new competitors, and how did you make it initially with all these other companies that are able to get into it?
Great question. Part of it was I was just going to show up. I gave my word. The second thing was my yes is yes and my no is no. It always has been. And if I can't do it, I'll say I can't do it. If we're too busy and we can't take that job, I'll let people know, instead of hoarding up jobs and then pissing off people for not performing. So that's the other thing. I was already well versed in the corporate world, right? Marketing, things that look good, things that work, shiny stuff. And so I already had that kind of in my tool belt. So I used it. I started branding my vans with vinyl logos before anybody was doing that. They had magnets and stuff. I put out big ads in the phone book, like big ones. Made myself look bigger than I was. I made myself look more professional, more qualified than I was. Yes. Guess what? It works. It works. And I always say this. I always said this from day one. I am not the best painter in town, but it doesn't mean I don't have to look like it. Right? It's all part of business. So those are some of the key things.
Yeah, TJ, I have mad respect for what you do, because I don't know if you know this. I may have mentioned this to you back when we hung out 10 years ago in Sonoma, but I ran a painting business. It was my first experience in entrepreneurship was running a painting business. And Jonathan can tell you how stressed out I was. I'm not a person that gets easily stressed, but I'm not super detail oriented. That's not my strength. So I remember when I first started up the business, hired the painters, and I'm all ready to go. And you think I thought I had a good handle on things. And then, that first week, it's like I made 18 trips back and forth from the paint shop. Guys are quitting on me. Guys aren't showing up. I mean, I'm letting the client's dog out of their backyard, and I'm chasing the dog through their neighborhood. That's just like everything that you could picture goes wrong. And it was the most stressful time period literally of my life to this day. I was 20 something at the time. So I have mad respect for what you do. So did you have any of that when you first started? Like just, the organizational challenges and keeping the train on the tracks when you started the business?
You know what? Not really, because for the first couple of weeks, it was just me, maybe the first month.
Yeah.
And then I hired one guy and he worked side by side with me and I trained him.
Yeah.
And then 2 and 3, but they were all with me this whole time because I started to get subdivisions and, it just kept going. I think I did a well enough job that I didn't encounter all of that stuff, but no, letting the dogs out, running to get an extra gallon of paint, that's just stuff that never ends. I mean, that's just going to happen,
That's the business.
and that's just the business, so that was tough. There was a time though, I was up to 39 guys at one point.
Jesus.
And it was
Wow.
chaos. It was chaos. I mean, it was cool to do it because I kind of wanted to do it just to see, and it was fun. But at the end of the day, you sit down and you do the books and it's like, I make more money with 16 guys, than I was with 39. But you don't know till you know.
And less stress.
And way less stress. So you want to talk about chasing the dog and running to the store like full-time runners. That's all it was at that point. I'm sure, I'm the only owner of my company. So if I had maybe like a partner or two, we could divvy up the workload and this, that, and the other. I had some good foremen over the years, some great foremen actually, that helped that quite a bit. But I noticed I was losing. And again, I think it's culturally in society where society is going. So after the first 10 years or so, I saw this decline in commitment, in people actually taking pride in being a trades contractor, because all of a sudden this social media frenzy hit. Get rich quick.
I want to be an influencer.
I want to be an influencer and all stuff. So I'm losing guys left and right. Like, they don't want to be known now as a painter, concrete guy, plumber, because it's not cool according to social media, right? So I had to think about something. How am I going to get my guys back, get the commitment even from their wives and their kids to keep them there? What can I do? I got to figure this out. So I'm like, either I'm going to quit because this is crazy. It's like, I'm a babysitter. I'm just a professional babysitter, or I'm going to capture their hearts. And so what I did was I took everybody on a company trip just to get everything back. No, first it was I sent them all on cruises, them and their wives. So I sent them all my leads and stuff, all my guys on a cruise. They came back. Half of them came back mad and pissed. The wives did, because they got too much alcohol. I don't know. They spun the card too much. That's probably what happened. The other ones, they were in for life. They were like, wow, we never had anybody do this to me. So over the years, we've gone to Jamaica, we've gone to Cancun multiple times, Cabo multiple times, Vegas multiple times, Hawaii, and the list goes on. We've taken a ton of trips for that team building, for, I think, just appreciation. We all want to be appreciated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a struggle.
Appreciate your team and show them that they matter to you, going above and beyond to create that bond and culture. That's so huge. And another thing you said, TJ, that kind of stood out that I wanted to kind of highlight too was you said at one point you had what, 39 on your team, right? And then you realized that 16 was more optimal for you and in your lifestyle, your goals, your vision. I think a lot of people go, I just want to be as big as I can. And I just need to grow until you add all this extra stress to your life, until you got to ask yourself, like, why am I growing? Is this what I really want? And it sounds like, along the way that you did that, and, some people aren't wise enough to do it. So commend you for that.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people that are on their path up, growing, figure out, don't grow for the sake of growing. Grow because it's in line with what you want to be, what you want to become, what you want your business to become, and try to pursue the alignment as opposed to just growth for the sake of growth.
Absolutely. And Doug, you know what? To cap on that, what you just said, I love it, because really the most important thing to me is my family and time with my family. So I always made a vow that, other than certain times, there's a time and place for this, but I wouldn't work weekends, and I would come home for dinner every night. It's the way it goes. That was my personal thing. And in my mind, I had set up, if my business takes me away from that, I don't want my business anymore. Because if a man gains the whole world but loses his life or loses his soul, what then? What good is that? Right? So I can work, and provide all this money for my kids, but then my kids don't even know who I am. What was that worth?
Fuck that.
That's horrible, And so I kind of stayed stuck to that goal, that alignment, that what's important to me.
Yeah.
And sure, I could get bigger, or I have other businesses along the way too that have come and gone, but I've dabbled in all these different ventures. Ben Painting just happens to be the longest one. But at the same time, never forgetting that, what are my priorities, and I'm going to keep them that way. And I watch you guys all the time, and I'd love to hear you talk about your wives, talk about your kids, your trips. I'm like, I love it. That's what we need, because if we get to the top and you turn around and nobody's behind you,
what was it all for?
What was it all for?
Yeah.
Take them with you.
And that's what Find Your Freedom's all about, that. Getting the time to do the things that make your heart full. Not always doing the grind. There's a time and a place for that grind. And it sounds like you definitely had different periods where you're like, oh man, I got to rebuild the business. I'm going to be putting in a few more hours. I'm going to be working a little extra harder.
Yep.
But there's always a finish line for that. All right, now we're back in business. Now I'm back to, taking these weekends off with my kids, taking them on vacations, having that special time to really develop that relationship and show them how much you love them. And this is why I'm working hard, so I can do this with you. And that's what it's always come back to, for Doug and I. And it sounds like you're in the same boat. We had a guest on just a couple of weeks ago who said, yeah, man, I could be making, double, triple, quadruple the money if I wanted to keep putting in those hours. but like, what is that going to get me? How is that going to improve my life from where I am right now? I have what I need. And this guy grinded a lot in his early career and put in a lot of hours for a long time. But he knew, like, hey, I've gotten to that point. And I think that's a really important thing to remember.
Yeah. And I love what you guys do. I love the whole purpose of your podcast. What you were sharing with me earlier is you want to build up. You want to give back. You want to see people be successful. You want to help them. This is your own time that you're spending. You're getting guests on to help others. That it's like, I love it. And for me, I think one of the biggest accomplishments that I can take away from my career, especially at Ben Painting and in my life in general, is I have that attitude of taking everybody with me if I can, that there's enough for everybody. And so one of the things that really shocked me, but when I did the numbers the other day, I have 19 guys who I've trained up and helped start their own companies, own painting companies here in Bend, Oregon.
That's sick.
And that brings me more joy.
That's incredible.
And more I'm full because there's enough for everybody. And that proves it. Whether people will say, oh no, man, you're building your competition. What?
Right.
Competition?
There's enough for all of us to eat.
First off, I don't compete, number one, because if it was meant to be mine, it's going to be mine. And if it's not meant to be mine, I don't want it. So there's enough for everybody, but it's an attitude, right?
Yeah.
It's an attitude. Right. But what is enough? And that's what we have to ask ourselves, what is enough? And it's different for everybody in different seasons of their lives, but it's crucial.
Yeah.
What's enough? I mean,
yeah, I can tell just like hearing you, like a lot of, I think other business owners, like, man, losing that good employee, losing that really critical member of my team, and then having them go start another company that potentially is competing. I love your outlook on that, because I think that's probably not the majority perspective that people have on it. But it's like, yeah, now this guy is, doing his own thing, supporting his own family, and there's enough meat on the bone for us all to eat off of, and to give them the training that you did to develop them and give them those opportunities. That's what a huge thing to be able to pride yourself on and have that perspective. That was really cool, TJ. Yeah.
Well, it was given to me first. So how could I not?
That's awesome.
I was that kid who was voted most likely not to succeed. I was, like I said, I was the black sheep. I was the unlovable kid because I was angry and I was sad and I wanted a dad and all these different things. But there was a few people who saw something in me and they poured into me and they mentored me. They believed in me and it's changed my life. So naturally,
that's so cool.
I cannot not. I have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They saved my life. These people saved my life. And I'm so thankful.
Paying it back.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're paying it back. I love that. One of the questions that we ask all the guests on is what entrepreneurship means to them. How would you define entrepreneurship? I love that story of you sitting at the table saying, I'm an entrepreneur. Can you tell us what entrepreneurship means to you?
Ooh, I like that. I think doing what you want to do, what you want to do, be who you want to be. I realize not everybody's created to be an entrepreneur. It's just a fact. We all have different personality types and not everybody can do it. But in doing so, if you're going to go through sleepless nights, almost bankruptcy at times, stressed into the core,
right,
all these different things, you might as well do what you love, right? You might as well do what you love.
I love that. That's awesome.
I think that's entrepreneurship, but go all in. Like I said, those things of integrity, honesty, let your yes be yes, your no be no, or don't even get in the game.
Yeah. Well, I think you just like really personify the grit and the resilience and the goodness that it takes to really be a successful entrepreneur. Thanks so much for sharing your story with our audience, TJ. I think this is a really powerful one. I think it's really going to resonate with a lot of people.
You're very welcome. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to jump in real quick. TJ, you just blew us away today, man. I remember, you and I only got to hang out for a few days, and that was probably a decade ago, and we haven't really seen each other since.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to be good today, but I don't think I knew that you would be this good. I mean, engaging story after engaging story. And I think the lessons that you learned and shared through all those stories was just so incredible. And yeah, I think anyone who listens to this and watches this is going to really take a lot away. So I want to thank you for your time today, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah, dude, it's so cool. Everyone has different paths to success. And this story that you just shared with our audience with the candor and transparency, I think was just so badass. And dude, I loved hearing it. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.
You're very welcome. Yeah, man.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out our website, findyourfreedompod.com, for all the tools and tips you need to find your own freedom. Also, sign up for our badass newsletter.